Welcome to the Intercut podcast channel, the weekly place to hear the latest in movie, TV, and entertainment that people can't cut away from. I'm your co-host, Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he's going to go punch that baby. It's Arturo Zurita.
I'm trying to remember how many babies were punched in this. I remember stabbing of bodies that has stuck with me for sure. But yeah, as long as I don't end up like some of the characters in this movie, I'm okay with that.
We are gonna focus a little bit on one particular movie because I'm coming off New York and you are busy attending back-to-back screenings
Yep.
with Chicago International Film, or is it Chicago Critics Fest, or is it
Chicago
International Film
International.
Fest? There we go. Chicago International. How's that experience going for you? How is this year's fest going?
This movie that we're going to be talking about, Poor Things, was one of the last minute additions. It is, if you're listening to this in time, is going to be premiering on Saturday. We were able to go to a press screening, which is why we're recording this early review, along with a bunch of other ones. Zach knows I just came out of Zone of Interest, so we're going to do a lot of these like mini capsule reviews from The Killer. What else we got? Kills of the Flower Moon, that's kind of separate, but a lot of these festival picks where
The Zone of Interest, maybe
we're
Anatomy of a
hoping.
Fall.
Oh, Anatomy of Fall, another great one. All these movies that hopefully are still slated to come out because one of the closing night films for Chicago is Bike Riders. That got moved. So we'll see how many of these come out. But as for Poor Things, it still has a December 8th release. And that's one I have on your calendars because I, like Zach, who brought up in his New York slate, think this is one of the best movies of the year.
Definitely, yeah. So we'll get back to our regular weekend must-watch shenanigans next week on Monday, but we're going to dive into Poor Things, the latest collaboration between Academy Award-winning actress Emma Stone and visionary director Yorgos Lanthimos, a film about a woman who's brought back to life by a brilliant scientist, played by Willem Dafoe, who then awakens with a childlike mind, but also an eagerness to learn about the world with all the pains and pleasures that it has to offer. It's a bit of a Frankenstein sex monster story delivered through the mannered lens of the creative minds behind films like The Lobster and The Favorite. Arturo, there are some Yorgos Lanthimos films that I know you love, others that you're maybe a bit more cool on. Where did you land with Poor Things?
Top three.
For his works?
Easily top three. I'm still contemplating whether it beats Dogtooth, which has been my favorite for a very long time now.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it's even up there,
yeah, I mean
I think says a lot.
That's a tier where I would say those are all movies that you love, right?
Yes, easily. And this one is a standout, not just in its story and its performances, but in its like very like dreamlike nature. You know, this is a movie where it's also segmented into parts. Something that I've kind of pushed back on some of his most recent ones. I know some people consider some of his movies their favorite, but the way that those were kind of like chaptered up didn't really work for me. The way he does it here and the way that he showcases those title cards is like so otherworldly. I just fell for this movie.
Yeah, the title card designs, I mean, they are some of the most beautiful images in a movie, full of them. I'd love to just hear a little bit more about how he
How he
designed
created them,
them.
yeah.
But there's so much to look at in this film. It is a eye-popping visual feast for sure, from the colors to the cinematography, all of which I'm sure we can get into a little bit more later on. First of all, I think we got to talk about just how funny this movie is. Yorgos, I think, is one of our most interesting comedy directors, and obviously a lot of the films have plenty of like weirdness and societal insight and drama to them as well. But my predominant response to most of his movies is just laughing at them. I find them to be very, very funny. And this one in particular, centered on Emma Stone's performance, is just so consistently hilarious. She's she's got this like very fun physical energy, as you can see from the image I'm showing on our stream, kind of like a Jim Carrey rubber limbed thing going on in certain moments of this film. It's very daring in terms of like how often she's like completely naked or partially naked and just sort of unshowy about it as well. But she's able to also sell the kind of sharp-tongued wit of other moments, and also the kind of drama around her character. I think it's a really incredible, funny performance from Emma Stone in the lead here.
Easily. On top of that, she's got some really great sparring partners. One of my personal favorites would have ended up being uh, Mr. Hulk himself. I did not expect Ruffalo to be a standout, but he might have been my favorite character in the movie. He, in particular, comes in at a moment where this Frankenstein monster of sorts is being held in this house, right?
Hmm.
Because the story builds from a scientist who no one really respects, but he's kind of out there doing these crazy experiments of like swapping limbs and bodies, and he ends up with a protege who comes in to study under him. And when this man comes in, he's more so a dude who wants to use Emma Stone's character to his own liking, right? Because he doesn't see her as like a child; he sees her as this almost escapade that he could have. And you see a lot of those moments in the trailer with how whimsical his character is and kind of the dynamic that they have. But he's almost like the roots to what causes her to really shine in this movie.
Hmm.
He's like the stepping stone for her, and he
Yeah,
does it so
her
beautifully.
her
He's
like
pathetically
enabler in a weird
hilarious.
way.
Yeah. No, he stood out to me a lot. I think he's one of the funniest characters that Yorgos has directed,
Hmm.
probably out of his career, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just being able to get Mark Ruffalo in this performance where he's really able to craft this kind of devious, somewhat pathetic
Easily.
Lothario character. He's like tries to present himself as this esteemed gentleman, but he keeps uh having these like toddler-like tantrums when he
Yeah.
doesn't get his way. He's just so funny and like kind of wicked in this role, and it's just a pleasure because I think Ruffalo is one of our great actors, and you
Easily.
know, not to like hate too much on MCU, but he's just is able to play so much more complex
You know
here.
what? I'm gonna still give it to him in the MCU in Endgame
He's fun.
when he goes with the Hulk and he puts the gauntlet on and he goes, "It's like I was made for this." That's our most quoted line, Alina and I. So I think it never disappears for this man. You know, this is the
Look, an
guy who
actor
led
will
Spotlight.
act.
Exactly. And in here, he's just a high class wimp, and I loved every second he was on screen. But Emma Stone, easily one of her stand up performances. If you love her in La La Land and you love her in The Favorite, I might argue that she might be even better in this movie. And I think it might end up topping her La La Land performance for me on rewatches.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where I feel like had she not won the Oscar for La La Land, this would kind of be a moment where we all rally around how good she is here. Because like
Right?
I really enjoy her in La La Land. I think she's great there, but that's not what I think of when I think of what makes Emma Stone an amazing actress. What I think of is her ability to ride this line between serious and comedic, because she is one of our most hilarious actresses. Obviously, kind of came up through her comedies, but also has
Super
this
bad.
pathos to her and is able to portray like an emotion, like an emotional authenticity to her character's journey. And it's such a bizarre journey here because she goes from like, you know, infant like uh child, you know, who can't even form words, into something that's like a really interesting collection of the scenes that she's gone through, right? Like she really gets
Yeah.
to build a character through the scope of this movie. And I think she's so good in it here that, you know, to me, this is definitely the best leading actress performance I've seen this year. And, you know, it's a bit of a shame for somebody like Margot Robbie, who I think does a lot of similar things in Barbie,
Ooh.
but I prefer Emma's
Say it.
work here.
Say it.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
not just that this is a standout performance from her.
yeah,
It's a standout character. I
yes.
think what Margot did with Robbie, like you were mentioning, is a great parallel to the journey that her character goes through here, because the person who you meet at the beginning, that journey that they go through in this film is not, it's like it's one you want to revisit, but it's one that you could take a lot from with how they learn and what they learn through all of the chapters in this film.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a actual really great comparison.
Um, so among this year's best actress contenders, you've seen Sandra Hüller in Anatomy of a Fall. We just talked
Pretty
about
good.
Margot Robbie in Barbie. Greta Lee
Solid.
is in Past Lives. You haven't had the chance yet to see either Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon or Carey Mulligan in Maestro, but do you feel like Emma Stone should be the frontrunner in lead actress?
You saw Lily Gladstone. Is it lead runtime?
I think so. There was a bit of a like controversy or maybe like
Yeah, I've been hearing.
uproar from a lot of the like Oscar prognosticators out there that she is going to campaign as lead actress rather than a supporting actress for Killers of the Flower Moon. I mean, she's in my eyes the co-lead of that movie. The story
Okay.
is really the story of her and Leo's character, their relationship together, their journey together. I don't know. I mean, she's not she's not in as many scenes as Leonardo DiCaprio, but she's definitely a co-lead of a 3.5-hour film. Let me remind you.
No, so by default, right? She's got
Yeah.
she's got a 90-minute runtime.
And
for
she's
sure.
very excellent in it too. Like she's among my favorite performances of this year. I do kind of think that like Emma Stone has like maybe more like more different things to play. Like it is such a varied performance, and that's maybe why I would lean towards her performance in Poor Things here.
Interesting. If this is the lineup right here, I think Sandra was really good in Anatomy. Margot is excellent in Barbie. I would love to see Greta still get that praise towards the end of the year.
Don't forget about Greta Lee. If you're in
and Carey
line,
Mulligan,
stay
I know
in line.
you really liked Maestro, and you said that their dynamic that they had going on with the way, I mean, the way that you described the dialogue in that movie has me very excited to see it in theaters.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen, bro, I'm giving her like 100 meters ahead. That's how much I loved her performance in this movie.
Absolutely. Let's circle back to Ruffalo because he's also gotten in the discussion for Best Supporting Actor this year.
Easily.
Do you prefer his performance to some of the other strong contenders we've seen? Ryan Gosling in Barbie, John Magaro in Past Lives, Sterling K. Brown in American Fiction, which you haven't talked about too much on the podcast yet, or Glenn Howerton in Blackberry, which we did spend some time talking about on we
having a great year, Zach? This is
Yeah.
sounding like it's gonna be.
This is a really solid year for movies.
It's a pretty solid year. Again, I think would be a very interesting discussion to compare Ryan Gosling's Ken character to what you have here, right? Because I know there's been talk about whether a male director can direct something that is very feminist in nature, a very very female-led movie. Like, you take Ryan's character of Ken and what he's supposed to represent in masculinity and what that movie was showcasing. Bro, you have that going on here with Mark Ruffalo. Like, you don't get this feminist tale without a performance, without a character like Mark Ruffalo. I don't want to say anchoring it, but damn, like he is part of the reason why it's getting what allows her character to push forward. John Magaro's great. Sterling K. Brown, fantastic. Glenn Howerton, I think, would be my second, technically third in this list. I am going to have to lock in with this man being the best one. I think Mark Ruffalo is better than Ryan Gosling, even though I think Ryan Gosling will have a bigger campaign.
Before you lock and throw away the key, what if I put Robert Downey Jr. and Oppenheimer's name back into the ring?
He can get second place.
Oh, all right. Okay.
My man had black and white scenes and color scenes too.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy Ruffalo in this performance.
No, hey, and for the record, I would not be upset with any of these gentlemen winning. They are all in some of my honestly, like, they're not even just great performances. All of their respective movies are in my top 20 of the year easily. So this is gonna be a stacked year.
Yeah, I still think I might lean slightly towards Downey Jr., but it'll be a battle between the MCU heroes, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah, between those two, and you can't beat a Hulk, so.
This is also just like a gorgeous movie to look at, which we were talking about a bit before. The set designed by James Price and Shona Heath is really incredible. Like, they have these incredibly colorful and vivid backdrops. During the Q&A that they were in attendance for at the New York Film Festival screening I saw, they talked about trying to push the film sort of to the edges of what might look like reality. So like the clouds sometimes have these purplish or like greenish tints that are almost like kind of bizarro land, but they never feel they still feel of Earth. And these sets that they built are really incredible. Just I don't know, what were some of your takeaways from just how the movie looked?
Well, like you were describing, especially in that act when they're outside, so you get to see a lot of the sky. What you were mentioning made it look like watercolored paintings, pretty much in the background, and they're very like expressionistic. It's almost the way that like a Van Gogh painting would look at the sky. And when looking at the production design, especially in the house, how they built his entire laboratory from the multiple buildings and her secret hideouts and stuff, it feels so lived in
Mhm.
that the moment they leave that place, because I wasn't sure how much of this was going to be contained into one location,
Right.
it feels so expansive. You have
Mhm.
moments where they're spending it in France. You have moments where they're spending it on this cruise ship, and all of it feels detailed to the degree of what most people would praise Wes Anderson for. I
Right.
think this is so detailed down to every little moment, not just around them, but the side characters and what they're wearing. It's just beautifully realized.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a full world, and you mentioned that it is sort of like city hopping, but they also don't quite feel like the cities they mention. They feel like their own unique,
It's
like
awesome.
alternate reality creations. It,
Yeah.
it's really really immersive and beautiful.
Even there, you see right behind her
Yeah,
that
exactly.
phallic imagery. Like there is so much subliminal stuff within the movie too. Like the way that Tim Burton builds a world when he was in his prime back in the '90s that
Hmm.
people like loved so much. Yorgos is on that level of production here, and even in the end credits, they kind of showcase and they zoom into a lot of those moments, a lot of the architecture and things around them.
Yeah.
It worked beautifully.
And also the Robbie Ryan cinematography, we should shout out. You know, he's worked with Yorgos in a couple films now, and they lean even more heavily into the like fisheye lens stuff that they kind of have gained a reputation for. There's a bunch of stuff that's shot through like peephole cameras that
Yeah,
that it keeps things kind of dynamic and different and
but it
interesting.
works.
Yeah, like it works for this sort of peculiar world they've built.
Hmm.
Um, we talked a bit about both Ruffalo and Emma Stone. Are there any other supporting performances that you wanted to shout out?
We can mention Pops over here. He
Willem
he
Dafoe,
does a
yeah.
lot of weird things. I don't want to spoil some of the stuff that are like reoccurring moments, especially with this scene right here.
Yeah.
But I found it fascinating that from like his point of view, he pretty much is, not just a doctor, but he is God to these creations that he's
Mm-hmm.
building. And I think that's what really adds this almost parable like story to it because it's the journey of a character of this woman who's growing up, but at the same time, like when you look at it from his point of view. Uh, he's the creator in a sense to these beings that he's put out there into the world.
Yeah,
I thought he did a
absolutely.
really good job.
Yeah. He's I mean, I think we've come to expect good performances from Willem Dafoe, but I think this is a particularly good Willem Dafoe
Underrated.
performance because he's somehow like both very gruff in his outer demeanor and in a way it seems like he's unfeeling, but there is like this
Yeah,
like hidden tenderness to the performance as well.
especially
Uh,
with what he breaks down in his past, and like you're saying it, he's very scientific, he's very analytical, and that's how he showcases his love.
mhm.
And great makeup, bro. Very great
Yeah,
makeup.
really effective. Connor in the live stream is asking how's Jerrod and Rami as well, a couple of very funny actors who make some appearances in this Yorgos Lanthimos movie. I was like very pleasantly surprised with not only how good Rami is in this film, but how much the film asks him to do. Like he's actually kind of got like a very sweet romantic part in this movie, and is doing some acting and some accent work, and is pretty convincing.
Remy was fantastic in this
Yeah.
movie. I think he is a great supporting character and a great character who supports. I would argue, I'm not sure how much of the later seasons of his show on Hulu you've caught, but he's been in that bag for a while. I'm rooting for him, but we haven't seen it on the big screen. And seeing it
Yeah.
on the big screen was fantastic. He plays a pivotal part in the story and her journey. And yeah, especially when the camera used the fisheye lens on him, it
Hmm.
really put you into his world because he really is the newbie into it in that first half of the movie because he gets invited to be the assistant, but he knocked it out of the park, man. I thought he was really good. I enjoyed him a lot. How did you feel on Jerrod, though?
I mean, Gerard gets to show up and deliver things in the sort of like sly, like under his breath style that I think he's become really well known for. I think he was, he got to kind of do his thing, but within the world of Yorgos, also looked very fly in this
You look
movie.
slick.
Yeah,
You look
yeah. I mean,
great.
it's kind of small part, but like it's a very effective part of it's a very critical part of the movie too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I liked him in this too.
He has a very great line when he's talking to her about his viewpoint of the world. It
Hmm.
very much sounded like the way Gerard looks at the world.
Hmm.
And I thought that was a standout line and a really good discussion that they have between the two of them. That said, my man was in the present time, bro. Like they did not. My man sounds like he just got off a set, doing 20 minutes on stage, and then went directly into this movie. There are some, I don't know. it has to be the way that he speaks. It just sounds so much like the persona that I know on stage,
Hmm.
and that could be me. But I would argue that in a movie where you follow the main character and you see her pick up certain things from the people who she meets along the way, even Mark Ruffalo's character, the more that you follow him throughout his journey, you see him kind of pick up, as you were describing, the high class things that he claims to be against, but he still kind of wants to chameleon. He wants to be a chameleon and fit within the high society that he makes
Right.
fun of. This man does not feel like he's been traveling with the woman he's been traveling with. It feels like Jerrod Carmichael. So it just stood out. It didn't take me out
Yeah.
of the movie that much,
No.
but it did just sound like him making a cameo in a movie that feels otherworldly.
Right. And that maybe is brings me back to why I was impressed with Rami in that, like, while he is very good on his show, this is something that didn't feel like he's just Rami, you know?
Yeah,
It
he
felt
felt
like
like of
he's,
that time and period.
yeah.
Yeah,
Whereas Gerard is maybe a little more similar to Gerard, even though I think his role is to kind of be somebody who takes
fair.
Emma's character out of her perspective and gives her a different perspective. So maybe that is effective to have somebody that feels like he's from a different part of the world or like a more contemporary time, right?
Very much.
Yeah. So we were talking about what a great year this is. Poor Things. You were telling me before we started streaming this might be your favorite thing that you saw at the Chicago International Film Festival. Are you saying that this is one of the best movies of 2023?
Oh, easily. I was very surprised because this has a very weird trailer, and it's been very fascinating to see people sitting for Saw and this place, and it's
Mhm.
got that weird score and that twang by the end of it as people go like, "What the heck is this?" It is weird in the best way possible. I think if the trailer interests you in any way, buy your tickets now. I think if you're a fan of Emma Stone, this is going to be one of the highest performances to root, not just for her, but of the year. I think this is one of the standout lead roles that I've seen so far. I am very excited to rewatch this one.
Hmm.
I want to watch it in an even better screen, bigger screen, because the world that they create here is one that I think is going to
It's
land on a lot of
painterly.
people's top. No, it's fantastic. Like again,
Yeah.
the fact that it's fighting with my number one Yorgos movie says a lot.
Mm, absolutely. Yeah. I'm. I am maybe a little less hot on it in comparison to Yorgos's other work than you, but I'm also a little bit more consistently uh and high praise of Yorgos's work than you, right? Like I think my list of Yorgos movies I love is a little longer than yours, and
Yeah,
I think I'd put that on. I'd put this one on that list as well, maybe in my top 5 rather than my top 3. I
yeah,
was trying to identify what it is about this one in comparison to some of his others, maybe makes me less, rapturous about it. Or whatever. Uh, and I think it's that a lot of his movies sort of start in this place where it feels like our reality but like slightly altered, and then it gets weirder and more distant and more absurd as you go along, or as you dive deeper into the characters and you see how messed up their psyches are.
for
And in
sure.
this one I almost felt like it was the inverse of that, in that you're thrown into this very bizarre world with all these crazy creations, and then as you go on Bella Baxter's journey with her and you learn about the world, she kind of becomes a little bit more normal of a person, and she shares more values that are similar to our contemporaneous world. And I don't know, I think maybe that's a journey that might ultimately make Yorgos a little more palatable for like your typical mainstream audience, and that this might be something that uh like a regular Joe moviegoer will find things to enjoy about as well, that they couldn't accept in a movie like Dogtooth. But yeah, I mean, I still think it's a very fun and beautiful and worthwhile movie, and I like you, I'm really eager to catch it again. It's definitely going to be. I feel like pretty confident saying it's going to be in my top 10 of this year when we ultimately do that video.
For sure.
Yeah. Any last things you want to say about Poor Things before we wrap things up and thank some of our patrons?
No, just make sure that you catch this. I want to say it's shot in 2:0, or it's more of a taller ratio. So
Yeah.
make sure that you catch it in a theater where you're going to be able to get all of the picture and not at crop, because this is one of those where you will have moments where it just feels like you're paused on a motion painting. Like it's that outstanding. But yeah, no, easily some of the best performances of the year. Definitely going to make our top 10 list for sure. It's already at the top of my Chicago one.
Awesome. So yeah, I echo pretty much everything there. We do want to give a quick shout out to our awesome Intercut patrons, the people who support this show for as little as $1 a month on patreon.com/intercutpod. They are in the Academy: Tushar, Cademan, Connor, Josh, May, Ricky, Joe, Janicia, Tyler, and Benji. And of course, the producer level patrons are Yuden Veer and Toon. Big thanks to all of them, and a reminder that you too can support the pod by going to Patreon and signing up for early access to certain Intercut episodes, as well as invitations to our monthly patron Google Hangout. We'll have to figure out the timing on that next one very soon. But yeah, shout out to all of you as always. Thanks again for your consistent support of the show. And I think that's about all for this edition of our stream. We're talking about Poor Things, but we'll be back with a lot more. I don't know if there's any particular fall film festival movies that you want to see us go a little bit more in depth on, whether that is something like Anatomy of a Fall or Zone of Interest. We're catching up with films like The Killer and Saltburn very soon as well. Just leave a comment, let us know, and we'll maybe do our deeper dive on a future edition of Intercut. You can catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, whatever social media you use, at ZShevich, ZSHEVICH, and check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me over at LME Movies on all social medias. We've been posting all of our capsules and kind of like daily stuff, recommendations for
daily recommendations.
Our picks over at Chicago, or you can find me over at Let Me Explain on YouTube, where I'll be recapping all the stuff we've been seeing in Chicago. Gonna try to make, if these movies get full release dates around that time, once it's released to the public, I'm gonna do a whole spoiler deep dives on a lot of these movies, and I'm just excited to talk more Poor Things. I'm just excited to rewatch it. I want to go back into that world.
Definitely, man. We can listen to more episodes of the Intercut podcast on whatever podcatcher you like. I use Spotify a lot of the time now. And then make sure you're subscribed not just to the audio podcast, but to the video feed on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/intercutpod, where you can catch our kind of tired but pretty excited faces as we break down the latest in entertainment. Find new episodes of our weekend must-watch streaming on our YouTube channel every Monday. And please leave us a comment. Like this video or other videos, consider heading over to iTunes to give us that much requested 5-star review. Really appreciate when you do that. And shout out to our listeners in Denmark for putting us on the TV review podcast charts out there. Like our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages. Support our Patreon. You can find all of them at Intercut Pod to get updates throughout the week from me, from Art, from guests that we feature on the podcast, from Chase, who's put out a couple new videos recently.
He's been rolling.
Yeah, Chase's area, and check out his YouTube channel as well. But that's about all for this edition of Intercut. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, people who push the boundaries of what is known paid the price, but that's the only way to live.